everyone. Welcome to the Show Me How podcast. This is an episode on the first-time buyer's journey to getting their first home. And we're going to give you some insights and information on how to make this journey as smooth and easy as possible.
Yes, that's what we're going to do. But John, why don't you tell us about your journey to the studio?
Yes, we want to make that journey less stressful than the one I had getting here, which was about 3 hours, thanks to the Kennedy and the weather and Waze. I'm going to call out Waze.
Go ahead.
So I take the journey every day to the studio, not every day, every week. And today, somehow, I ended up like a mile west and a mile south. Don't know how that happened. Of course, it's the day I'm in a hurry and the day I was stuck in 3 hours of Kennedy road construction traffic. But
so we're going to
make this journey
a little bit easier than John's journey here.
A lot easier.
And I know it can be overwhelming. The first-time home buyer is, how do you budget? How do you financially prep for this? How do you choose the right realtor? What's a mortgage? Like, a lot of people think, oh, I get a mortgage, but there's so many complexities within that. And, why even a $20,000 difference in price can be so beneficial to the buyer, yet the broker, it really doesn't matter that much.
Right.
I mean, it matters pennies. So it's how invested your broker is to make sure you're getting the best deal.
Right. So, budgeting and financial prep, how important that is to your journey, making sure you're prepared, making sure you don't overstress yourself for your first purchase, because you have a lot of years on this planet. Don't try and buy into,
keeping up with the
Michigan
Joneses.
Avenue and Streeterville and all that stuff for your first condo or home. Make it easy on yourself. Choose the right realtor, as Stephanie said. And What are the mortgage basics? So what options do you have out in the marketplace? You want a broker that, obviously they're not going to be your mortgage broker, but the better the better information you have, the better you're going to be in a financing situation. If you get the right loan, you find the right financial incentives, and you start out in the right foot. So that's what this episode's about.
Exactly. Talk about, we're looking at budgeting now. What are some tips that we could tell our listeners?
Well, know your limits. Again, I'm very mathematical and analytical. You want to break down all the different elements that you're going to have to deal with once you purchase a condo or home. What are those? We have the payment, of course, and you got to keep that payment reasonable. It shouldn't be with greater than 28 to 30% of your gross income. And that'll keep you financially stable. But that's just the payment on the mortgage. There's other extra costs that you have to consider.
Exactly. Like when we're looking at it, there's property taxes, which usually is paid by the mortgage company because that's their greatest asset. They want to make sure that's paid. But insurance, maintenance, utilities, HOA fees are not paid by your mortgage company. So when you're looking at that, I think, people will be like, oh, this condo's $250,000, but the HOA fees are $800, $1,000, $1,200 a month. Well, that is on top of what you're paying for your mortgage. So that's really important to look at.
Well, and I'll tell you a little story too. I had a customer who I helped buy a club, which is just amazing, the Astor Club, and they purchased a penthouse in this building, and it was a great deal. But the penthouse, it was crazily inexpensive, like $300,000 for a penthouse.
Wow.
In downtown Chicago, and beautiful area, 2 blocks from the lake. But the HOA fees were insane. Now, so I think the mortgage payment was, a couple $1,000s, but the HOA fees were 1.5 times that. So they're paying $3,000 a month in fees. Now, why is that? That's because of the age of this building. When we went into the I'll never forget, Stephanie, this is insane. I didn't even know this existed. We went into the basement of this building. I'm not kidding you. There's all these nice cars. It's a parking garage. And we go in there, and there's water everywhere, coming in all over the place from the different sides of the wall. I'm like, what is happening? And so this foundation is so old, it's leaking water everywhere. To the point, this guy had this beautiful Porsche, and he had a kitchen mat from a commercial kitchen, about inch thick rubber, next to his car, because when he went to his car every day, it was always moist.
Oh my God.
Yes, and he had to have that rubber mat so he wasn't tracking water in his car every day.
And do people think that there's going to be a special assessment for this or no?
People don't know. You know, they're like, they see often, buyers see the price and they're like, oh, this is a great deal.
Right.
Oh, yeah, there's a little water. What they think beyond it, and what's beyond that is like a $2, $3, $4 million
Right.
HOA special assessment. They're called. A special assessment is frightening. In this same building, which is about 24 stories, I think it is, total residential units. They must have 20 windows per floor,
Oh God.
and these windows need to be replaced. And that's a special assessment. And guess what the special assessment was? $80,000 per unit.
Oh my God.
Yes, so on top of their mortgage, now they knew this because they were well prepared. But if people look at these buildings like, oh, it's a great price,
Right.
there's usually a reason it's a great price.
It's absolutely.
So one of the things is that we help our customers with is finding out what the HOA fees are, what special assessments are coming up. I, as a commercial broker, look for these types of deals. I want buildings with huge special assessments. I want plumbing failures. I want windows falling out. I want, I want all those terrible things to happen because all the owners of the condos want to get out of the building.
Right.
Right. They don't want literally. You get signed up for a mortgage by the condominium association that you are required to pay. So
Exactly.
if you don't know about this and you like sign in a year before these guys go for a special assessment and you didn't observe and look at the windows on your own and realize, wow, these are 40 years old. They're not looking so good. What's going to happen here? And then next year they're in the board meeting and everyone, because I'll tell you, the other thing is these people live in these buildings and they're at these board meetings and guess what? If you bring up the special assessment that needs to happen, you're the leper.
Right.
People don't want to bring it up. They want to look the other way. They're like,
This isn't happening.
Exactly. A lot of people are like, yeah, let's not focus on that today. They're trying to sell their condo for a great deal before the special assessment hits.
Right.
So it's very, very important to have a realtor that knows to look out for these things and to make sure you don't get jammed up by another, $700-800 a month on top
That's
of this.
a lot.
Right?
Right.
So, it looks like a great deal. We're getting into the Gold Coast is where this property is. Yeah, you're getting into it. It looked like a great deal, but you're going to be hanging on by
You're
your
swimming
fingernails.
to your car.
Right.
But I just ran into that with a deal too, and it's on a 3-story walk up in Albany Park. And, we're running around doing the inspection. We go down in the basement, and one of the large hot water tanks is leaking. And we're not just talking drip, drip, drip. We're talking puddle. And I'm like, So it took us 3 weeks
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
between me, the attorney, the HOA. The other agent told me they didn't want to see the inspection report because then they would be liable and have to
Yes.
talk about it.
See no evil,
it's-
hear no evil.
It's again,
Speak no evil.
these are the things that agents are doing out there, and John and I are
Oh, yeah.
laughing a little bit, but it is really not laughable.
No, it
I had
isn't.
to drill it down to make sure there wasn't a special assessment before we bought it, so my client wasn't responsible for it. So
I've ruined a number of realtors' days when I show up and, because I have construction knowledge, partly due to her father and brother, who I work with for many years. But, I see these places and I'm like, what? No, are you telling me, broker B, the other broker, that you don't realize that the floor is collapsing? Or I mean, literally insane stuff. Well, we haven't really looked at that. I'm like,
okay, we're stepping on it right now.
because people like that, unethical brokers, will look the other way. I mean, so anyway, the other thing you have to focus on is your down payment and your closing costs. These are important things. How much are you going to put down? I like to say 5% is my typical. I'm
Right.
doing commercial though, but the range is really 3 to 20. So if it's a great deal, the seller might be demanding 20% because they're like, look, I know this is a great deal, but you need to have skin in the game. As a matter of fact, I just came from a deal today where it's kind of a long term. It's a solar deal. And so solar deals take a long time because you have to get the local utility to give you a study and tell you that they can take bandwidth into their system and then that they will buy it from you. So it usually takes 6 to 9 months at least. But it can take even longer. It could take up to 15 to 18 months. So the owners of this property, I said to the solar operator, I'm like, you need to come up with some cash, and it needs to go hard. So you need to be paying, I think we're getting $10,000 per quarter up to 3 quarters, and then we're getting 35,000, and then 25,000 next payment, so that that the buyer is really into this deal and they are going to put their money where their mouth is. And then, of course, closing costs. They should be about 2 to 5% of the price you're paying. So some other fees that you really need to think about when you're putting together your spreadsheet.
Right. And with the mortgages on the residential side, remember, if you're not putting down 20%, that there's a PMI that is attached to it. And
yeah.
so
But tell them what PMI is.
You explain it because you're so good at
It's
all
pre-mortgage insurance. So basically, until you hit 20%, you have to pay an insurance amount. It's to cover the lenders. Lenders typically like to loan between 80% loan to value or less.
Right.
50%, 70%, because then they know if they have to take a property back, they already got 80% in it of value, and they could sell it pretty easily. Even if they have to sell it at 20% below what the valuation was,
Right.
they know they'll get their money back. So if you're at 85% loan to value or 90% loan to value, you have to pay what's called PMI. So it's not cheap, it's not expensive either, but it's a couple $100 a month.
Right.
And that just adds to it. That's your utility bill, your insurance bill. It all adds to it. So you want to make sure that you're coming in, if you can, at 80% loan to value.
It can add up, though. I pulled some stuff just so we had some numbers to share with you. If you're paying PMI, let's say on a $250,000 condo, it could be $100 a month, but you're paying for 126 months.
Yeah.
Right. So,
$12,600.
Yeah.
And it's not with compounded interest.
Right.
It ends up being $20,000 all day.
Right. So if you do end up where you're only able to put 3 or 6 or less than 20% down, just know that you have that PMI. You can pay it off early.
Yeah. Yes,
you
can.
So
You
that
pay
is
extra
something. If you get a bonus, you get something that at work where you get an extra, a couple $1,000s, put it towards that, because you don't want to pay that $20,000 extra.
Yeah, you want to avoid that. There's a balance, right? Because if you have credit card debt, obviously it's at 20%, 25%. You have to decide what's going to make the most sense. But even if you put $100 a month extra towards your mortgage every month, I did that. And my mortgage, I think, is going to be 4 to 5 years shorter than the 30-year amortization.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
And you just have to, a little bit extra.
Yeah.
But as you're thinking about all that, remember, as John was telling you about the special assessment, not to $80,000 special assessment, but things do come up, especially in condos, that maybe there wasn't a special assessment when you bought the place, but the board has, I always advise to get on the board, but the board has decided to do something, and which will create a special assessment for you. So make sure you have a cushion fund for something that unexpected.
Have an emergency fund is what she's saying, basically, which, that goes for everything. Medical things occur, your pet gets sick, you have a car accident, who knows, somebody needs to borrow money, a family member, you want to help out or something like that.
Right.
You don't want to be, again, squeezed because you went to, the Gold Coast on your first purchase instead of maybe Wicker Park or Logan Square.
Right.
And moved your way up. Remember what they said, moving on up by the Jeffersons.
To the east side.
Move on up. Remember, gentrification is a good thing.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I want to bring this up because it's important. Because the left and the Democrats basically say gentrification is a bad thing. They're gentrifying. The builders are coming in and developing, and they're taking over, and they're making all the prices go up. Yes. How do you think people made money in the old days? Gentrification can be a good thing. It's a good thing. If you sell your home for $100,000 more than you paid for it, or even more, and you move 4 blocks away, almost in the same neighborhood or virtually in the same neighborhood, gentrification is a good thing. It helps people. It helps the neighbors make money. It can help everybody. There are cases where it can be a bad thing, but overall, gentrification is a good thing. It's bringing people into the neighborhood that are going to help the businesses thrive and help people live better lives. You're going to have more money for street cleaning, for street repairs, things like that. So,
well, I think people don't realize that, like Lincoln Park, we grew up in Lincoln Park. I mean, back in the day, my parents bought our 3 flat for $28,000.
Right.
We didn't sell it for $28,000, but that was an influx of people moving into that area that, there was rooming houses, there was this, there was that. So it has been happening for a long time. It's not just started happening. It's been happening throughout time.
It's the word has been co-opted
by
people who use it for a negative, but it should never have been allowed.
It's not
to
negative.
Happen. It's a great thing for people when you look at it from the right perspective, and you don't get all bent up in identity politics.
Exactly. Let's talk about a little bit about the hidden costs and unexpected expenses.
Yeah, so when you purchase a home, it's a great point, or a condo or home or whatever. The basis goes up. So if the previous owner bought it at $200,000, you're buying at $300,000. The tax rate's going to be based on $300,000. So guess what happens? In about 12 to 18 months, the taxes go up significantly. In that case, right, 30% to 50%. So you have to be ready for that. And again, if you don't have the right brokers and people on your team, they're not going to bring this up. They may not know it. A lot of people, let's just be honest, they don't know as much as they should about some of these issues.
Exactly.
And that ends up becoming a weakling for you. So making sure you understand it is what we're here to try and do.
And also, there are ways to fight your property taxes, just by simple things, by making sure you get your homeowner's exemption, little things to make sure you're looking at your taxes, not just at a bill that you throw on the side, but looking at it. And then there's companies that fight your taxes, like you can fight your taxes yourself too. And it's a process, but it's worth it. Don't just take your taxes and your increases and at face value, but fight it.
Well, I think that's a great point, Stephanie. I think what you really should do is look at all these things when you go in. The property taxes, make sure you engage somebody to make sure that they can argue your property taxes. Look at other valuations. Like that's something I do. I help people do valuations for their tax purposes.
Exactly.
To look at their property and look at surrounding properties in the area. And I do a better job than the lawyers, frankly. I've seen the lawyers work. It's not great.
John's a miracle worker.
Well, I just look at it discriminately. I am an owner, and I've looked at the lawyers' work. And frankly, lawyers are good at lawyering. They're not so good at other things.
Right.
Not that I just...
Another...
You guys are all brilliant.
Major repairs, though, like... Look at homeowners policies, like if you're moving into a single family house, not so much a condo, but single family house, there's so much that can go wrong in the first year, right?
Well, I think these two, we have major repairs tied to utilities. So if you look, for instance, at an HVAC system and it's 20 years old, guess what? You're going to probably have to replace it, but that's not a bad thing. One, you could negotiate with the owner to lower the price a bit. Two, you want another system built in there potentially. Some of the new stuff isn't all as great as they say it is, like refrigerators are a bad example. But you would like a more efficient one, so your utility bills, maybe they're $200 a month when you purchased it from the previous owner, but you can maybe get them down to $150. So not only do you get a break on the price because the HVAC system needs to be repaired, or maybe the kitchen appliances need to be replaced, but you now lower your utility bill. So that'll help you in the long run too. And it's all incremental savings.
Right. And also looking at, when you're moving into a place, it's funny. My daughter just bought a place and, on Compass, I work for Compass and people are giving away free stuff all the time. I just got her 2 free rugs, but there's other places, Facebook Marketplace, you could get stuff. So
yeah, Facebook Marketplace.
Don't just think that, I have to go, to buy all brand new stuff. Let's be logical, think what you need, build it as you go too.
Yeah, buy as you go. And a great point is moving costs.
Right.
People think, oh, we're going to have this, and it's going to be great. And then the $5,000 moving bill comes, right?
Right.
So that's a big bill, and you're going to have to consider it's going to have to be paid. I don't know about you, but I'm not up for carrying somebody's couch up and down the stairs.
No.
Et cetera, et cetera. So again, hidden costs are there. They're really not hidden. They're just things you have to think deep about to make sure you're considering all little nuances of it.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
Even your commuting costs. And your commute from your new location, things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Also, your groceries in that neighborhood. Again, if you're looking at the Gold Coast, they don't have Jewel and Mariano's unless you drive 3 miles, which you probably might not have a car, right?
Right.
You're going to have to go to
find a parking spot.
the 7-Eleven and pay 20% more for your coffee
Do
and
I
your
see everyone
cream.
on the Gold Coast shopping at 7-Eleven?
Sure, they do. Or the little
Mini Mart?
mini marts of some sort.
Okay, I don't see that, but okay.
Oh, it happens all the time.
When we're talking about realtors, and I guess I asked John this, what do you think is so important, the right realtor? I know you just talked about your experience of your deal that just like the people, out to lunch. But why is it so important?
Well, again, you're talking to a guy who has 3 degrees. I speak 3 languages. I'm a commercial broker, so we tend to have a higher amount of education. And the point is that residential brokers take a 2-week course. I did too, but I had a lot of more education, and I can't work with the commercial industry if I don't know what I'm doing. They would just call me out immediately. I would serve no purpose to a commercial broker, a commercial developer, or something like that. If I wasn't great analyst and I didn't know how to look for these things, I didn't know to look at zoning and HOA situations. I do assemblage of condos so we can deconvert condominiums. So if you don't bring value, you're not going to work in commercial. But in real estate, residential, virtually all you do is get a 2-week course and off you go, and you're now a broker.
Right.
And you're certified by NAR and CAR and all these real estate organizations, but you have no history. And that's not to demonize anybody. Everyone needs a place to start, right? I mean, even in my career, I knew nothing virtually when I got out there, but you build as you go. But if I'm advising somebody on who they're going to work with as a first-time buyer, I think you're going to want an experienced person. You're going to want somebody that's been through this process. They've helped people before, and they know what they're doing. And,
I think the biggest thing is that I've run into from the residential side is, I told you about the agent that didn't want to see the inspection. I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't take it from being there. The hot water tank is leaking. But being your advocate for your buyer or seller, I've done it both. And one of the things that I've seen a lot lately, which I cannot wrap my head around, because if I'm a seller or if I'm a buyer, agents not showing up to inspections, agents not showing up to final walkthroughs, agents not showing up to showings.
Or they hire.
Right.
A big thing they do is they post on websites for the brokerages, I'll pay somebody $25 to show up and do my showing because it's not worth their time. Well, if you have a broker that's doing that, I mean, how invested are they?
Right. What's your point?
$25, I mean, they're going to make $12,000, $15,000 off the deal, but they're offering this out to people to go sit in, babysit, and they don't know the house at all. I just had a situation where a great customer bought this property for $25 million. I sold it to them. Then they re-engaged me. They wanted to talk to me about helping them lease it. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to lease it. I don't want to knock your broker out, but I know this property very well. I analyzed it up and down. And he said, I just got a call from this broker. I wanted them to show one of the spaces because they're struggling getting this place leased because it's office. And this is 4 years ago. This guy's had this listing. And he said, you know what, I can't make the showing, and I don't know if I'm the right person to do it anyway because I really don't know the building that well.
What?
4 years.
Wow.
It's a 220,000 square foot building. So this stuff goes on in commercial as well as residential.
Yeah.
And in residential, it's like to me, it's out of control.
It is.
They're constantly doing this. So you have to
Right.
set up some kind of relationship with your broker where you say, listen, I expect you to be showing this house. You're the one that knows it.
Or even doing
Unless you
open
have a partner
houses.
and doing open houses. Unless you have a partner that you're partnering with and you're going to split it, I think that's one situation. But if they're bringing in some random broker to fill in, unless it's an emergency, I would say that's
I
a
say
no-go.
no. I see it
wouldn't
every
allow that.
single day.
Yeah.
Every single day. So that is really when we go to, when you're looking at a broker, it's, they're licensed by NARS, CARS, whatever. But speak to some of their ask them for referrals to speak to some of their former clients, because that will show you. Unfortunately, I don't think some of these sellers necessarily know they're doing this. So
No, they don't, because they're just happy to get the place sold, and
Right.
often they're hands off. And that's the way it really should be.
Right.
But it's just like writing a contract. I mean, I'm a contract writer. It's a lot of what I do. I have to put things in and clauses in that you shouldn't have to worry about. But if I don't put them in, guess what? They're going to be a problem. So
Right.
it's better to add this kind of understanding to your agreement with your broker right up front. Some of the other red flags you want to look for: a pushy broker who's trying to push you, or they're rushing you
yes,
to get something sold. Because listen, if you're a broker, you don't have a full-time job most likely, and sometimes people are on the edge and they want to get things sold quickly.
Right.
If they're pushing to sell it, that's a red flag for me.
totally.
If they're not communicating with you effectively, if you're finding out about things way after the fact, if people are showing up
Yeah.
to see the house and you weren't informed, again, red flags that you might want to start thinking about.
Exactly. And just knowing overall, certain, some agents, are interested in their commission. Let's be honest. There's some stir on the residential side to go from 2.5% commission to 3%. And, certain brokerages are pushing that. And I think that's okay if it's a very detailed, situation. But the open communication with your buyer or seller has to really be upfront that this is what I'm going to do for you for that commission, and for them to really understand how you bring value to it, how much follow-up is involved. But if you're not doing any of that, like, what value do you bring?
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, but that's part of the trick, right? People aren't
Right.
going to know what value to expect unless they listen to our podcast, of
Exactly.
course, right? I mean, this is why this is so important. The other thing is to understand is that, again, back to Stephanie's point, brokers make commission, and they're paid on commission. Sometimes sellers offer incentives to the buying community brokers to get people out there. So if your broker's all of a sudden pushing, first of all, there's a co-op fee. And now the co-op fee has to be negotiated with each of the sellers.
Right.
In commercial real estate, we always had to negotiate the fee with the seller.
And the
Not only
buyer.
my commission, but also the buying broker's commission have to be discussed and agreed upon before you engage in a contract. This is new to residential.
Yes.
And so in some cases, people have tried to pull moves where they're not going to pay a buying broker a commission. And so, that's totally out of control. That's terrible.
Right, and
for
then
them
you have
do
to go
that
back to
because
your
these people
buyer and
do
ask them
earn-
for their commission,
Yeah,
which is terrible.
And that's just not fair.
Right.
And you're put in a situation where you now have to ask the buyer to pay you. But, so you have to watch out for those circumstances. And a broker could be looking at how much co-op they're getting. Some will pay 2%. Some will pay 3%. If they're looking through houses and seeing what that commission is and not showing you certain houses, you have to wonder about that. So if
Yeah.
you get a report, you may want to look and see if you can find the co-op fees in there, or ask them what the co-op fees are so you know. And if you see a trend, 3%, 3%, 3%, because that's kind of high.
Exactly.
2.5 is typical, and 2 is, on the lower end. If you don't start hearing those co-op fees and asking about them, you may have somebody that's pushing what's the houses that are best for them and not you.
Exactly. And that brings us to we're going to have our guest speaker in next week, someone that just went through the first-time home buying experience. So some of the things that John and I are talking about, they can really lend a voice to what the experience was like, why working with an agent that knows what they're doing is so important. And we'll look forward to that next week. But before we go, we want to talk about mortgages. And this is John's forte because it's all numbers and I don't know. You like that shit.
Well, commercial deals. Commercial deals are often done best with layered financing. So, you'll have some type of financial incentive to get a portion of the down payment covered by some organization like Federal Housing Association, or a TIF fund, Tax Incremental Financing Fund. And then you may want a special financing layer. You may get a bridge loan for the purchase and the beginning construction until you're ready to go into a fully established, fully built out property, which then you convert to a conventional type of mortgage. So we use lots of different financial layers. But there are financial incentives also in the residential market that are critical and that you may have access to. So we wanted to bring some of these up. Also a good broker, like, working with somebody like Stephanie and I, who knows these types of things. Now she's just learning because I'm teaching her. But, honestly, this is another important point. Yeah. I think it's really somebody that's inquisitive and is a consummate learner. Exactly. Is the type of person I like to work with. Because once you learn something, what's next, right? I mean, in my whole career, all my working career, I would work for like 2 to 3 years at a company, and then I'm like, okay, what now?
What's next?
What's my next role? Am I going up to executive suite, or am I going to go to a different industry? And I would make a decision I would change because I'm constantly learning. And that's why I love real estate, frankly, because it's always different. Every day is different. A solar deal one day, a multifamily deal the next day, a residential deal down the road, a deconversion. So it always stays interesting. So back to the person representing you, you want an inquisitive person. Why? Because they're going to be like, oh, what's the financing options? By the way, they're not a mortgage broker, but they'll give you some inclination to help put you on the right foot and get you in contact
with a mortgage broker.
With a good mortgage broker who's going to look out for your best interests. And some of the things that are a consideration are, a fixed mortgage. Is that going to be the right solution for you? Those are usually going to be the lowest rates. They're steady, Eddie. Yeah. And it's a 30-year amortization typically. There's lots of variances, though.
Right, and it's predictable. So if you're really conscious about your budget, you're like, okay, I need to stay at this threshold. That's probably a great one for you. And then there's
and in the I want to get one more thing in there. So a fixed mortgage only means that you're only hitting on one piece of it. It could be a 30-year, it could be a 20-year, it could be a 15-year amortization. That's a huge difference. What does that mean? It means you're paying all your interest up front on a 15-year, and so you're getting that mortgage and that value much quicker in a 15-year, and you're paying a lot less money over the term of the loan.
Exactly.
So you'll end up in a great position if you can afford it. But again, this comes down to, living in Galewood versus now Logan Square, Avondale, or Streeterville, River West, River North, or the Gold Coast.
Exactly.
Right? So you want a 15-year, you may have to go further out, but you'll be able to own your home much quicker. You'll have a lot more value in it quicker. Then you'll be able to upgrade sooner versus going straight for Streeterville, River North, or something like that.
Right. And then what about, I'll let you talk to the adjustable arm mortgage.
So adjustable rate mortgages, we're in the trauma zone right now with adjustable rate mortgages this moment. So why is that? Well, in the commercial industry, commercial loans are amortized over 30 years, but they're only 5 year. They always reset in 5 years. What was 5 years ago? 5 years ago was March 2020. So the rates were about 3.25%. Now they're 6.25% to 6.5%. That doubles your payment. So, if you got in on an ARM and you're like, oh yeah, it'll be great. The payments are low.
Right.
We'll just reset it at the new low rate. That's what people were thinking back in 2020, because 2015 they were all operating about the same. And then 2021 came. You know, who knew that we were going to have the COVID nightmare and
Right.
and the other administrative nightmares that we've had and the inflation and all those things, right? But
Exactly.
you really better be in a strong financial position if you're going to take adjustable rate mortgage, because surprises happen. And while you're sitting there focused on something else, your 5-year mortgage is ticking on and you're at 3 years and you're focused on your career, not paying attention to the mortgage industry, which is ticking up.
Right.
And all of a sudden you have to reset that loan and you are going to be out of your condo or your home.
And I think adjustable rate mortgages are good for in the residential. If you know you have a 5-year mortgage and you know that you're going to sell, you're only there for a specific reason, maybe your job, whatever, then you could probably make a look at them. But you have to know that you're going to get out of it, because if you roll the dice, like residential in 2020 was at 2.99%
Right.
interest. So they've doubled too. So you have to really, really understand. And that's where your broker will lead you to a great mortgage broker who will explain all this stuff, because you don't want to go to a place that you're calling a number, you're getting a random person. Right. They're not explaining the fees. They're not explaining the options. They're not explaining what you need.
Right.
They're not explaining everything to you, because it is, it's not like you just get a mortgage. You have to make sure all the loan documents, I just went through this with the HOA documents, weren't up to what we needed. So we had to send it back, and then they had to redo them. So there's a lot that goes into this pull and take, and making sure that your broker is working hand in hand with the mortgage broker to get this deal done.
Yeah, there's give and take. You have to have accurate documentation for the bank, of course, but also there's derivatives of the ARMs. So there's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 2 year, 4 year. You can do almost anything. So again, to Stephanie's point, if you're going to sell in a year or 3 years, then you get a 3 year ARM. That's fine. You're going to be taking action. But if you're getting it at a low rate and you're doing a 5 year ARM and you just take your eye off the ball, that's when the danger occurs.
Right. And then some of the other considerations to talk about, like the first time homebuyers grants.
First FHA loans offer they're great for first time homebuyers. So you can get a lower down payment. Of course, you'll have to have PMI then, but the payment is much, much lower, and it can help you get into a house at an incredibly low rate, 5 to 10%. Also, VA loans. So, if the requirements change from time to time. If you're a veteran, you could certainly get a good deal, but sometimes they'll extend it to the children of veterans.
Exactly.
And so it depends on the state, depends on the programs that are in action currently. But you got to look at these opportunities too, because then you could buy a potential house with 3% down. Right? Now, those are good news, bad news situations. You don't need a lot to get into it, but the term is going to be longer, right? And you're going to be paying a lot more interest. So while you can get in cheaper, and that sounds like a great deal, you really have to look at the long-term consequences of those loans too.
And then, the seller concessions. So, the big thing right now in residential is as is. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to pull my hair out. But just because something says as is, as a realtor, you can go back. I just did this on another condo. They were renting it, and there was some damage. And I said, I know as is, but this is more than as is. So we ended up getting a credit for that. So that's just because it's as is doesn't mean that you can't go back to the seller and say, I understand as is, but this is more than wear and tear. This is actual damage.
Yes. So the other thing is getting pre-approved. It's absolute necessity for you to get pre-approved. You got to go into these deals with a pre-approval ready to go, because, otherwise you're just spinning your wheels. You're wasting the broker's time too.
Exactly.
It's not cool to get into those situations because the broker is working, driving around, spending time looking at this stuff. So it's important to get a pre-approval.
And it's funny, I had another client that was out in the suburbs, and his comment to me about a pre-approval was, we make plenty of money. And I'm like, unless you're going to bring your bank statement to the showings with you, no one cares what you say. They don't. The seller's like, you make plenty of money. If you make plenty of money, why aren't you pre-approved?
Yeah.
You know, so as a buyer, you may think it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal to a seller because A, it shows that you're
Serious.
able to buy the house and that you're seriously looking for a house, right?
Well, and by the way, I wouldn't work with anybody without a pre-approval. I just won't do it. And if you have a broker that's glazing over that and you think that's a convenience of some sort, you're not being accurate. It is not a convenience. They're being lazy. They just want to get the business, and they're probably inexperienced, and they don't know how this is going to come back and bite them in the long run.
Exactly.
So now we're going to move on to the final section here, which is why price difference of as little as $20,000 means more to you than it does to a broker. So this is a big caveat for me because I went through this. I work on big commercial deals, 10 million, 20 million, etc., where 20,000, 60,000, 100,000 isn't a big deal. But let me tell you, the people I work with are analysts also. They're looking at all these bottom line dollars and what have you, and it's just the cost of doing business, but you pay attention to it. If you look at the real math behind commission incentives in the residential market, there's a lot of risk here.
Right.
Because, ultimately, if you break it down, a home listed for $500,000 and you negotiate it down to $480,000, which is a savings of about $20,000 for the buyer, that sounds like it's no big deal, or what is a big deal? It's a lot of money, but to the broker, it's nothing in commission. It's literally about $600 to $1,200.
Right.
So you'll see brokers that just don't care. They're like, oh no, that's a great deal. You should take it. The $480 is not a bad price. They're not going to be sinking their feet into the ground, kind of holding that $500,000 price point for you, because it's too much work and effort over the long haul of all the commission they're going to be getting paid.
Exactly.
So if they're making on a $500,000 sale $15,000, and they're making $14,400 on a $480,000 sale, and it's going to be a argument back and forth, and it's going to be a lot of skin off the seller's.
They're going to have to work for it.
They're going to have to work for it, and it doesn't mean that much to them.
Right.
So you have to be very careful. When people start asking for $10,000 and $20,000 drops, and your broker, if you're selling, is saying, yeah, it's no big deal, you got to look at why that's happening. I don't like to think it's an unethical behavior, but just it's something I look out for because it means a lot more to the seller and the buyer, frankly, in this case, than it does to the broker. So you have to be very careful when you're negotiating these prices with these brokers.
And also when you're negotiating as the buyer, like say something's on the market for $500,000, but your broker's done a comparative market analysis and shows that the house is worth $480 instead of $500, and gives you the explanation of why you're going in at $480,000 as the buyer. As the seller, there's only one time to be first on the market. So if your selling broker doesn't do the same analysis to get you the right price point, why are you dropping? Yeah. Why weren't you the right price at the first time?
Stephanie's point is solid. Again, coming from an analyst and a data person, show me the money.
Right.
Right. So you think I should drop it to $480 or, not offer this much? Why?
Right.
Show me why I should do that. What comparative market analysis shows you that it's worth me dropping it $20,000? Don't just take their gut feeling, I got this feeling, Make sure they earn that money. That's $20,000 out of your pocket.
Well, and also when you're the buyer, and I've seen this on the residential side, something's listed at $500,000 and they call for highest and best on Monday. We're going over asking, blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets emotionally, like they lose their mind, like, oh my God, I got to have this place. Let's just calm down for a minute. Like, let's look at this. It doesn't support this. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to sign a rider that if it doesn't appraise out, you're liable for that extra $10,000. So, and do you want to do that?
Exactly what Stephanie's saying is dead accurate. I think the the way to articulate it is the loan to value ratio. So
I've been
know,
right
when
twice.
people- at least twice.
Oh my God.
It's very emotional. She's an emotional person because she's a residential broker.
No, for John to say you're right, like that's an act of God. So I just want to make sure I got
I'm
that.
trying to build off her wisdom and knowledge.
Right. Oh my
Yes.
God, wisdom and knowledge
Yes,
too? Wow.
very much so.
Okay.
So, you get these bidding wars because people, this is why I'm a commercial. Okay, no emotion,
No emotion.
no emotion. We're all about the numbers. I don't care what the paint color in the bathroom is.
I love
know,
the light fixture.
I don't care that the shingles were made of dogwood pine. None of that matters to me. We're all about the numbers. But in the residential
Oh, God,
sector,
they're
you see
crazy.
these people go crazy. Oh, I love the neighborhood. I love this. And I understand. You want to put your family there and you get this image. But guess what? There's 100 homes coming on the market. Often, not always. I mean, there's a tightness in the market today, so I shouldn't say that. But just try and remove your emotional component
Yes.
from it and understand that the bank is going to look at it like I am.
Yes.
They're going to say, listen,
Right.
your emotion and wanting your kid to go to the school next to, Skippy, the rich kid, is an incentive for us to loan you more money.
Exactly.
And when you bring that 504, I offered 540. I won.
I won.
I overpriced it over everyone's head, and I've given my, all my money away. The bank will be like, no, thank you. You're going to have to come up with that extra 40 grand.
Right.
On top of your, let's say 20% down or whatever it ends up being. You're going to have to come up with that 40 grand. And now,
Right.
maybe you have money to throw away or somebody's going to gift you some money or something like that. But in a lot of cases, people do this and they end up having to drop the bid.
Right, because
the bank
they
will
can't
not cover it.
And that, again, goes back to your broker to really understand that. I went through that with a client, and they understood that if it didn't appraise out, they had to sign this. They'll pay the extra $10,000. They were willing to do that, but I brought that to them ahead of time.
Right.
Before they said,
Right.
like, we win. You do win, but show me the money, like,
Right.
in the end.
And if you don't have a broker that understands this, and they're like, okay, they may be thinking, great, I'm going to make more commission.
Yeah.
Because they're offering 20, 30,000 more. Oh,
Yeah, no.
Again.
And the deal usually falls apart.
Well, the deal can fall apart. I don't know about usually, but they definitely makes it more difficult. And, so therefore the broker should be asking these questions. Well, do you have the finances? Let's say the bank doesn't value it at that level. And especially these days, the banks are being very tight and scrupulous on what they're going to loan on. And they're very, very tight on it. So,
You know what? An interesting, you made me think of mortgage broker that I work with all the time. And you know how you get these pre-approval letters that say you can spend up to $500,000, let's just say, and you're bidding on a $380,000 place, whatever. So he's done something very interesting. He does a pre-approval for everything I put a bid on for the price that I'm offering, instead of letting the other side know that they can push it up $10,000, $15,000.
Yes, that is a great point.
Yeah.
I've seen this happen before.
Right.
Where people provide a pre-approval letter. Let's say the building's 500 grand, they have a 550.
Right.
Well, if I were on the other side of that, I'd be like, oh.
They can go up to
Guess
550.
what? We have somebody else is stalking the property.
Exactly.
Looks like we're going up in price. So you got to be very shrewd about that. It's very important. It's very great.
I just went through that twice, and it is, and you think, oh, I'm just going to show my pre-approval, and I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, I want you to put that pre-approval at exactly like $5,000 over asking.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a pain in the ass. Okay, I wanted to say that because each time you go to make an offer, you have to tighten up that pre-approval letter.
And that's when working with a great mortgage broker works.
Yes,
it does.
And somebody who's available for you like that, and they're ready to go, and they're like, okay, just let me know when you get there, and I'll resend that pre-approval letter right away, adjusted to that new offer.
Yeah, what I did in that situation, so we went to look at 5 places. I sent him all 5 listings before we looked at it. Mm-hmm. So he had it in there. And so whenever we wanted to make an offer, he would be like, okay, which one was it? Oh, yeah, I remember what the price was. And then I would call him and say, let's go. So it's a very, it's not just make an offer. Yeah, this happens. It's all encompassing. It really
Right,
is.
right.
And you really need to know that. So,
And by the way, so we're giving you the high levels, but we're going to bring in specialty experts in
Yeah.
mortgages, mortgage brokers who we think are talented, and we'll have interviews with them, and we'll have them give you some deeper dives into this topic for you.
yes.
So be ready for that. We look forward to you joining us for those episodes too.
So, what are
And-
some of our takeaways from today?
Well, lots of I
Stay
think
off the
lots of
Kennedy
great- Stay
until
off the
till
Kennedy.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, if you're going to a showing, don't do it during construction season and show up. Like,
And don't rely on Waze because John almost punched his Waze on the way here.
oh, it's so disappointed with Waze. Used to be so great. Budget wisely, right? I mean, that's the key thing to all of this. Again,
Exactly.
don't try and move into your, unless you're extraordinarily wealthy, don't try and get your dream home out of the gate. Be reasonable
No.
with it. Try and find a place that's going to add value. Try and focus on gentrification areas.
Yes.
Areas where you can gentrify are
Yes.
being gentrified, and you
Yep.
could sell it for a higher value and move into the next neighborhood or area that you desire. You know, if you're starting out, you're maybe just getting married, and you're not ready for kids yet. You got to get used to each other, be married. You don't need to be living in Lincoln Park at the best school, right? You don't need to be there. So
Right.
take it easy. Start out where you're going to be comfortable price wise. Then plan and strategize the stuff.
And also, like, don't be afraid of a place that needs some. I mean, it doesn't need new walls. Needs some painting. Needs some updating. That's where you're going to get your value. It's not when you go into a place that it's all done. Well, where's the negotiation
Well,
there?
you know, another wonderful point she's making is where do you get value out of houses
Right.
or condos? So again, I told you I want to buy these commercial places with everything broken down. Well, if I'm looking to purchase a home or a condo, I would love a crappy bathroom and a crappy kitchen.
Right.
Outdated appliances, old HVAC system. Those are the three key areas where you can really make some value.
Exactly.
And so you don't need to, like as Stephanie said, tear down the walls or anything. But if you can just upgrade, put in some granite from the coriander or whatever, or what's the cheap stuff? Formica was it previously?
yeah.
You know, $3,000 investment here. Go to Apt Appliances or something like that and buy a whole kitchen for $4,000.
That's what I just did with
Right?
Riley, yeah.
And it changes everything. And some light fixtures and swap out the toilets and the vanity and put in a nice soaker tub because I love taking tubs. I don't know about you. But, you know, these are the things that add value to the property. So get a property that you can do
Right.
a little very easy makeover on. You
And
know,
also-
Apt Appliances installs all the appliances for you.
That's why we
it's
went
no
there.
work for you.
Yeah.
The granite person will come. You find one granite expert. It's not rocket science to cut stone and put it in, although I have seen a lot of mistakes. But they just put that granite in, you're done, right?
Well, I think
You're good
it's
to go with it.
also when you look at your broker, like my dad always taught me, have a guy. So your broker should have a list of these people to help you with this stuff.
Well, good brokers and experienced brokers would, right? So again,
Right.
back to the right broker who's helping you find the right places.
Mm-hmm.
Choose the right broker. Understand the mortgages before you get into this and the financial challenges, and work with somebody who's going to be looking out for your best interests, not
Right.
who's just there to make a commission.
Right.
You know, get to know them. Don't just have them as a transactional person because this is a big sale or purchase that you're working on.
Right.
You want somebody who's invested in your future as well.
And answers the phone. Let's just be logical. You answer the phone.
Right.
Anything
So
else?
I think that's it.
Really?
We hit on all the hot buttons for today. I think we went a little over on our typical podcast duration.
Well, we had to get through your drive here, so we look forward to it. I think we have a lot of good stuff for you. I think that John and I are trying to educate people, make it fun, and also just to really take a step back. You know, like slow this, as my dad always used to say, slow.
Slow it
Remember,
down.
Dad?
Yes.
Slow.
Slow it
Because
down.
you really, when you're rushing, when you're emotional about something,
Emotions in residential, especially.
you make bad decisions. And at the time, you're relying on someone to have your best interests at heart where they might have their own best interests at heart. So You don't have to take it so slow. If you don't get the property, there'll be another one.
That's right. Let me give you some more wisdom. Never go to the grocery store hungry.
Okay, how is that applicable?
Because you're going to buy everything.
So don't go to a showing
Don't
hungry?
go emotional to purchasing a property.
How do you
Try and
not go
remove
emotional?
Remove it as much as possible.
That's
Take
from
it
a male
easy.
perspective.
Slow it. Yeah, of course. Don't let.
But anyway, we'll see you next time. Thanks for showing up.
One more thing.
What?
We want to focus on our making sure we're doing the best job we can with the content. So please give us your feedback. Send your emails. Send your notifications. Send your questions. Send your suggestions on how we can make it better. We're trying to do this to make it conversational and fun. So we hope you enjoy that. But we skip stuff sometimes, right? We're not going to go bullet line, bullet line, bullet line. And if there's things that you would like us to cover that we maybe didn't in this episode, let us know. And if you'd like to talk to specialists that maybe we didn't bring up that are important to this, which we will be getting to lots of different specialists, developers, contractors, insurance people, public adjusters, which is a great topic we'll be covering in the future for property loss. Let us know what those things are. Send us the notes and the insights. And thank you, as always, for participating and telling all your friends about us.
Yep. Be safe out there.